and ready, and that is Dr. Timothy Moore. Dr. Moore is a biological psychologist, BS, Lincoln University in '86, MS, Howard University '89, PhD, Howard University '93. He is now at Morehouse doing teaching and researching. Dr. Moore has a book coming out next month, The Science of Melanin, Dispelling the Myths. So you want to look for that. His assigned topic today is the pineal gland, melanin, neuromelanin, and consciousness. Welcome to the microphone, Dr. Timothy Moore. I've been told to announce if anybody has cars parked in the circle at the entrance of the auditorium, the cars will be towed. It'll cost you a lot of money to get your car back. So you need to move them. Okay, Brother Moore.
What's up, brothers and sisters?
What's up?
Y'all feeling all right this morning and getting the knowledge? I would like to say that my first Melanin conference was 5 years ago here in D.C., so it's good to be back home again trying to get some knowledge, but now I'm in the position to kind of spread some knowledge. So I'm hoping that what I'm going to present today will be a mixture of what you have heard already, add some new components, and hopefully let you know that there's some real substance within these presentations. A lot of the statements that are presented in the media are basically to downgrade anything that's black, anything that's strong in terms of speaking about black people. But we also want to stay away from some of the misconceptions. So as a scientist, I like to present things so that people at least have a working knowledge base. I had attempted to talk about I wanted to talk about the material-spiritual connection and looking at melanin as the conduit. Well, the title of the presentation is actually The Pineal Gland, Melanin, Neuromelanin, and Consciousness. So what I'm going to do today is explain some things from not just a cultural standpoint, but explain why it is that there may be a difference between the European, the African, and telling you why the prototype, that is Africans, is the relationship to the Creator. In order to comprehend a metaphysical connection between the material and spiritual planes of existence, it is pertinent that we define six key scientific terms that will be used throughout this presentation. Melanin, 1. 2, the nervous system. 3, the endocrine system. 4, the pineal gland. 5, melatonin. And 6, sotriol, or vitamin D. Melanin. When you think of melanin, first think of a large molecule that exists in many forms in several interior and exterior body sites. Skin melanin and neuromelanin are the two general terms that should be used to discuss melanin functioning. The skin and brain are two biological structures that can be experimentally investigated. Therefore, refer to these two body regions to discuss the mechanisms by which melanin affects human life. Other than the skin and the brain, melanin can also be found in several internal organs, as Dr. Brown has discussed with you. Wherever melanin may be found in the living organism, just remember that the melanin molecule has some very important physical properties, allowing it to enhance the functioning of the organism. Carol Barnes gives a very clear description of the melanin molecule in the following statement. In his book, Melanin, the Chemical Key to Black Greatness, he explains that melanin may be defined as a heterogeneous, polycyclic polymer of high molecular weight containing several types of important bond linkages and are generally brown to black in color. Different chemical subunits, bond types, and functional groups arranged in a specific order give melanin its unique chemical and physical properties. Melanin is found in many places in our environment, such as the earth's soil, bodies of water, and plants. If we think from a holistic perspective, we can begin to see the connection between the microcosm, that is the human body, and the macrocosm, that is nature, environment, the universe. In actuality, melanin is the conduit that allows energy to flow back and forth from the macrocosm to the microcosm. The nervous system and the endocrine system both contain melanin in strategic locations. These two systems make up the original MCI, and I state that as the original multi-communications interface. We will explain later how MCI can allow the human body to communicate with external energy forces. The nervous system. The basic unit of the nervous system is the neuron, or nerve cell, which conducts an electrical impulse from one part of the body to another. For descriptive purposes, the nervous system can be divided into two parts, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system includes the brain and the spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system includes 12 pairs of cranial nerves and their branches and 31 pairs of spinal nerves and their branches. Communicating networks within the central nervous system and various brain centers which process incoming sensory information make possible the appropriate unconscious or conscious responses to sensory input. The endocrine system. The endocrine system is composed of a diverse group of tissues which function to produce and release hormones into the bloodstream. The pineal gland. The pineal gland is a small body located approximately in the center of the brain. Some scientists believe it is the governor and regulator of the entire endocrine system. The human pineal arises as a median evagination of the diencephalic root of the embryonic origin. So from the very beginnings of the origins of the cell, it's located in a spot where it's developing and it's now moving to the center of the brain. In most mammals, the pineal gland moves from the roof of the third ventricle and loses connection with the brain except by a stalk. The adult human pineal is a pine cone-shaped organ, a shape which suggested the organ's name. It is a fibrous structure composed of material similar to the filaments of the optic nerve, so definitely something related to seeing. The pineal cells, or pinealocytes, are derived from the ependymal lining of the epithalamus. Both light and dark cells can be distinguished in the mammalian pineal. The dark cells contain pigment granules of an unknown nature. And this is the same thing they say about this so-called dark matter out there in the universe. It's an unknown substance, and we can start to relate to this dark substance again as some form of melanin. The dark pinealocytes are interconnected by tight junctions, suggesting that electrical signals may be communicated between the cells. Melatonin. Melatonin is the major hormone secreted by the pineal gland. In 1917, McCord and Allen made the interesting observation that bovine or cow pineal extracts added to the water in which tadpoles swam caused the larvae to blanch. That is, to become very light in color or even transparent. This interesting pigmentary effect was duly appreciated by the dermatologist Aaron Lerner, who was searching for a factor which might be responsible for vitiligo, that's like white patches on the skin, in humans. In 1958, Lerner and his colleagues were able to isolate and determine the structure of the substance, an indolamine which he named melatonin. So that happened in 1958. In the past 20 years, we have accumulated solid experimental evidence to attribute a true role for melatonin as the hormone of darkness. Sotriol, or vitamin D. Sotriol is another name for vitamin D. Vitamin D is a misnomer related to its historic discovery as an ingestible vital extract. Vitamin D was the name before the ingestible extract was recognized as a steroid hormone. According to Walter Stumpf and colleagues in North Carolina, sotriol is used for the steroid hormone of sunlight, 1,25-dihydroxyvitamin D3, in correspondence to the steroid hormones such as estradiol or cortisol. Vitamin D3 prohormone is produced in the skin by the short-wave component of sunlight. Production of vitamin D3 and its precursors is higher during the spring and summer months in latitudes remote from the equator. The effect of sunlight on vitamin D3 formation is regulated in the skin, among others, by its melanin content and distribution. Accordingly, very dark-skinned individuals absorb less ultraviolet light and are therefore more prone to rickets in equator-distant latitudes. They're compared to less pigmented or pale individuals. The role of melanin in the regulation of vitamin D3 production can be defined from observations that the hormone of sunlight, sotriol, stimulates melanin production as shown in vitro, that is, in a petri dish, and that the hormone of darkness, melatonin, lightens melanocytes. This complementary action suggests a feedback relationship between the two endocrine systems and the related concept of the endocrinology of sunlight and darkness. Before we further explore these terms, let us first deal with a very important question related to our topic. That is, the origins of human. Without a doubt, this analysis will be made from a bold African perspective. The prototype of all humanity came out of the continent we know of as Africa. To this date, there is no scientific evidence to refute that dark-skinned or highly melanated African people are not the mothers and fathers of all human forms we know of today. Moreover, the biogenetic structure of African people is the model for all other forms of humanity. The European, the Asian, and other human forms created from the mixing of African, European, and Asian genes are also aberrations of the original man or woman. I emphasize the word forms because the terms mankind and humankind should not be taken lightly. I believe the transition from the original prototype to the other forms of humans is very significant. A point of clarification needs to be made about the other human forms and the concept called race. In my opinion, the black race, the white race, the yellow race, the red race are all irrelevant in non-scientific terms to explain humanity. Race is a sociological construct created by individuals who have a propensity for this dichotomous logic, that is, splitting things up into two. Either this or that. Politically, race has been used to divide and conquer, and we must begin to do away with this construct. If there is a need to divide and categorize people, then refer to ethnic variations and describe people in terms of their origins since the development and migration of Homo sapiens sapiens out of Africa to other parts of the world. Therefore, Africans, Europeans, and Asians would be the essential core of humanity, and the mixing of these groups have created other ethnic variations such as Latinos, Spanish, Italians, Indians, etc. If we honestly, if we honestly look deeper into the origins of human, we see that all human forms are nothing but advanced forms of animals. Just as lower forms of animals can be classified as species, for example, rodent or canine, as individuals who make up the human species. Understand the following statement. There are different types of ethnic groups in the human species, and variations in the human species depend upon the origin of the person's ancestors, origin of the person's modern ancestors. So we all derive from one human being, but in terms of the change that has taken place over time, the modern ancestors come from those most recent changes in history. Therefore, the mental, the cultural, and the philosophical differences found between different ethnic groups that stems from their place of origin after the spread. Many anthropologists believe this change occurred within the last 100,000 to 35,000 years ago. Others place the change much further back in an attempt to separate and deny an African origin for modern man. In other words, the further back you go in time, it would be easier to say the differentiation occurred in other parts of the world and not Africa. However, we bold African scientists are wise enough to understand the rationale for taking it away from Africa. By asking questions concerning the origins of human, we can begin to understand why the physical characteristics of people do make a difference, but not from a sociological or political standpoint. The difference is key because it reveals why the material-spiritual connection is maximized in people who have a close lineage to African descendants, the original prototype and replica of the macrocosmic creator. At this point, I would like to utilize the Dogon cosmology to drive home my message about human. From this point on, I will be referring to people of European descent as the pale fox, and the term comes from a book written by Griot and Dieterlen, and originally published in 1965, called The Pale Fox. It is one of the most comprehensive books to present to the world the history, philosophy, science, and cosmology of the Dogon people of West Mali in Africa. As I read certain passages from the book, understand that this documentation has been passed down for generations by African griots, well before the pale fox wreaked massive havoc. For example, the chemical biological warfare, these strange diseases, nuclear destruction, human holocaust, genetic tampering. Now, most of what I will state about the pale fox will come from passages in the book. In the Dogon creation mythology, Amma, A-M-M-A, is the original God before all things. Amma's creative will was located in the Po, the smallest of all things, P-O. This Po correlates with DNA, and the Dogon certainly did not have microscopes to reveal this fact. However, modern science has proven that their intuitive science is very accurate. Nomo Anagono were the first beings created from the little seeds of Po. It marked an important step in the creation of human life. Its coming into being, which was to be perfect like its creator, could only result from a precise order. Nomo Anagono, called Ogo, O-G-O, are represented by drawings which underscore the order of their formation in Amma's womb, and also the respective future roles in the development and organization of creation. So everybody does have a role to play. The first one, called Nomo Dai, Great Nomo, will remain in heaven with Amma as his agent, as his witness and regulator of the sky atmosphere. It will also be the guardian of the spiritual principles of being living on earth, us. The figure called Drawing of the Great Nomo shows the head and body of 4 lines of colors which denote the rainbow and the 4 elements. From the outside to the inside, respectively, water is black, fire, red, air is white, earth is ochre. Similarly, on the social level, the 4 colors are evidence of the 4 first ancestors of man, and of the 4 races or lineages that descended from them. There was a second and third form of Nomo Anagomo, but it is the 4th form that is specific to this part of our presentation. The 4th, which in the form of Nomo Anagono, will bear the name of Ogo. In the very course of its completion, it will rebel against its creator and bring disorder into the universe. It will eventually assume the form of the pale fox, the image of its own downfall. For the formation of the 8 perfect beings upon whom Amma had bestowed the word, as Brother Coran has stated about the word and sound being very important, and who were to be chiefs or the kings of the creation in progress, would be permanently disrupted by the individual activity of the initiatives of the fox. There are several versions of the completion of Ogo's formation, as well as the continuation of his life. Their deeper significance remains the same, but each one represents an original expression. All are useful in that they illustrate the character of Ogo, the first being to develop his personality in opposition to that of Amma, the original God, thus introducing psychological diversification in the universe. Ogo tried to gain possession of Amma's work for his own advantage. Put this into perspective and think of the negative aspects of the Human Genome Project. Dissatisfied and breaking all the rules, Ogo began to move about with the intention of getting hold of the secrets of the universe in formation. Seeing that he could not obtain what he was looking for, that is, his female twin, Ogo wanted to get hold of the seeds created by Amma, including the Po, the cornerstone of creation. In this way, he thought he could take possession of the universe. Ogo, however, wanted to take unfair advantage of this knowledge in order to act on his own authority and to equal his creator. Amma, however, removing from the placenta the basic spiritual principle of the being in gestation, put it out of his reach. This spiritual principle, which was to animate Ogo's female twin and which was her prefiguration, was entrusted to the other Nomo Anagono, who would keep her until Amma produced a support for her. All Ogo's future attempts would be to look for and take back his lost female twin, or yet his female soul, a loss due to his pride, his revolt, and his initiatives. He will never find her again. So yet another way Ogo upset Amma's plans, since he did not wait for his splitting, that is to say, his own twinness. Therefore, from that time on, he will be alone and weak. And the word that's described there is Yorugu. For those of you who are on top of the literature, this is where Marimba Ani gets the title of her book, Yorugu, an African-centered critique of European cultural thought and behavior. The last passage I will read from the Pale Fox deals with the transformation of African people into other forms, which is very key to our topic of discussion. The transformation of the rest of Ogo's placenta into a burning star deprived him forever of the possibility of getting hold of it. The sun and its motion in space will be entrusted to Nomo Dai, who resides in Amma's sky at his side. On earth, the heat of the sun will burn Ogo, transformed into the fox, so as to keep him from acting, to dry him out. Now check out the ozone. Know what's going on with all this skin cancer that's happening. But the rays of the sun, as blood of the placenta, will act upon the seeds placed in the earth and watered by the rain, promoting agriculture and the growth of plant life. You can't do without the sun. You need it, but there's some people that can't deal with that strong sun. So it's something very important, but the fact that these individuals knew about it in their cosmology and understood about this transformation, that's what we want to focus on. What I have attempted to do is use the Dogon's cosmology to support our current history and the accumulated anthropological evidence we have concerning the origin of human. In sum, the pale fox has lost its connection to nature. Living in the cold, harsh, poorly lighted environment of Europe was an advantage for the pale fox. These environmental conditions greatly influenced the development and the spread of this mischievous character. However, the loss of the genetic capacity to produce melanin caused the entire physical and spiritual nature of the pale fox to be antagonistic to most of what nature had to offer. This does not mean that all pale foxes are naturally evil because they lack melanin. No. What we are saying is that the internal and external body of pale foxes has altered to the point that the pale fox has difficulty transforming energy back and forth from the material and spiritual realms of existence. Scientifically, we can explain an alteration in the present. Scientifically, we can see an alteration in the functioning of the 6 terms we defined in the beginning of this presentation. We will expound on the changes that have occurred in the pale fox by discussing how melanin, the nervous system, the endocrine system, the pineal gland, melatonin, and sochiol function to help the human body act as a vehicle for transformation. Now, melanin functioning. I'm certain you've done a lot of reading and understand basically how melanin is working, but it's a concept that always needs to be stated so there are no misconceptions presented. Melanin has unique physical properties that allow it to function as a neutralizer of harmful cytotoxic molecules, as a nerve conduction facilitator, and as an energy transformer. I give a detailed explanation of these functions in Chapter 3 of my book, but I will concisely explain the functions here. And for those that are interested, certainly you can ask me about the book or sign your name and I'll try to let you know when it does come out. First, melanin's function as a neutralizer is not as pertinent to our discussion as the latter 2 functions. As a neutralizer, however, melanin can protect cells from dangerous elements in the environment. In fact, melanin has protective capabilities in every region of the human body that it is located. Externally, it protects the skin from the harsh elements of Mother Nature. It protects the skin from the harsh elements and basically protects it from this ultraviolet radiation. So the less you have, certainly the more. Internally, it can eradicate highly reactive molecules, for example, free radicals, from causing damage to delicate organs such as the brain. In the brain, for example, it may eliminate the destruction caused by drugs and or excess metals that may be consumed during food consumption or inhaled through the air. Secondly, communication in the nervous system is dependent upon electrical and chemical events. This electrochemical communication stimulates the transmission of signals from one end of the nerve cell to another end of the nerve cell. The signal is transmitted in the form of a nerve impulse, and the bioelectronic properties of melanin can facilitate the conduction of nerve impulses. Concisely, melanin can facilitate that and generate much more activity than non-melanated brain regions. As a result, the individual may experience quicker reaction times. Thirdly, the consistent appearance of melanin in living organisms at locations where energy conversion or charge transfer occurs, for example, the skin, retina, midbrain, inner ear, as we've already discussed, is of particular interest. Melanin is strategically located in these places to absorb and convert various forms of electromagnetic energy into energy states that can be used for the nervous system. Melanin is found in the skin to absorb ultraviolet light, in the retina to increase visual acuity and reaction time, in the midbrain to facilitate complex motor tasks like the expressive rhythmic movements in our dance, in the inner ear to amplify the thumping bass in music and or to maintain rhythm and equilibrium while you're rapping to music. The fact that melanin is black or dark in color could explain how it is functioning as a converter of energy. Since dark skin or any black substance absorbs heat, light is not re-radiated, but is converted to rotational and vibrational forms of energy. Contrary to blackness, whiteness reflects light. Therefore, non-pigmented individuals who lack the energy-enhancing capabilities of melanin. Although there are comparable distributions of neuromelanin in the brain, darker-colored people have a more modified external pigmentary system. So I'd like to now show some slides to give you a sense of how we're talking about these scientific principles and relate them again to the material-spiritual connection, which is usually the most difficult thing to present, because in this Western science or the methodology that is presented, usually things are, if you can't count it, if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. That's why spirit is such a very difficult thing to explain. Have the first slide, please.